everybody. This is Connor Listoka, and this is 372 pages we'll never get back. Joining me, as always, is Mike Nelson. Mike, how you doing?
I'm good, Connor. How are you doing?
I'm wonderful. I wanted to, before we got on with the penultimate episode that we're doing here today, answer, I guess, is probably the most popular question that we've been getting via emails and social media, and that is, who or what is responsible for the theme music for the podcast?
Oh, yeah. Go ahead, tell them.
Yeah, so people have just been sort of banging our door down, wondering if this is sort of like needle drop music or another song like we found, like the fan fiction rap. And to answer their question, it is an original composition that I composed, and that's where it came from.
Yeah. A question about that.
Yep.
And this is an honest question. I am a babe in the woods here. I have no. Is compose the right word for a piece of music such as this? I mean, well,
like it. It didn't exist, and then I sat down and then
and composed.
An amount of time later, it existed. So yeah, it would not have been a piece of music without me doing it. So
that's true. No, that is true. I do now. I picture you. Like Wolfgang Amadeus Mozart at your billiard table, throwing that ball back and forth as you feverishly scribble with your quill pen on a scroll of fool's cap. So yeah, okay.
It was remarkably similar. Yes. Thank you.
And also you said a lot of interest in this, a lot of interest. So yeah, I don't know, just off the top of your head, what, 800 letters?
I mean, well, then, that's a lot. There's not that many.
Right, but that's what you said a lot.
Yeah, well, there's been interest in it.
I'm just trying to, when you say a lot, you have to have some bar for it. So 800 is the starter. So less than that.
Less than 8. Yeah, it was less than 800.
600.
But it was still, no, it's not 600 either. We haven't gotten 600 emails the whole time we've been doing this.
Is 600 way too high or 600?
There was one guy on Twitter who asked about it last week, and he wondered if it was me or you. So I thought I would address that. It was.
All right.
It was not that much interest, but I thought that I would answer his question.
No, that's fair and proper.
Nobody else cared.
It was Connor who did that. And this, of course, is the podcast. You probably know because you are listening, but sometimes people accidentally listen to podcasts. This is the podcast where Connor and I, who've worked together for years over at Riff Tracks, we are reading through a book, and hopefully so are you. It's not mandatory. It's suggested that you read along with Ernest Cline's Ready Player One. And this was the premise being that this is a book we're probably going to hate, and, let the listener decide. There are many episodes out there already, and there'll be, I guess, one more to follow. I don't know if we'll do a dust-up episode or anything like that. There might be addendums and things after that, but probably just one more episode of this podcast. And Connor, our hero, Wade, is looking for the Easter egg from the Left in the Virtual World by the billionaire Halliday. And when last we left him, where was Wade? Where are we up to this point?
Well, Wade was sort of in media res in this plan he had, and we don't know all the details of it when we left the last time. And as far as I'm concerned, we don't know like a lot of important details. So like he's ended up as an indentured servant. He was dragged out of his apartment like a chunk of Spam from a can by the drop cops.
Yes, this was very much like an episode, if anyone remembers, because I think the anniversary for the release of this film just rolled around. Brazil. It was very Brazil-like as these, they roped down and took away our hero, our citizen, our ordinary citizen. And more about that later, but continue.
Yeah, so he's working as a indentured servant in the tech support area of IOI. And this is something that people have to do when they have amassed debts to IOI and can't pay them off. So they show up to this job where they are essentially, sheltered and fed, but it's like, severe credit card debt or something. You can't actually get rid of it because the interest keeps piling up. And so it's sort of a lifetime of slavery, I guess he puts it.
Yes. And we have a timeline problem once again that, or at least a bit of fogginess that I think we should sort out in a minute. But
this will not be the last one.
Yes, but we probably should start with one of our favorite departments. Yes, fanfic or real? It is time. Yes, indeed. That popular series, fan fiction or real. Connor, we did not talk before this. Did you bring any to the table? Because we acknowledge that it's getting rough at this point, because the premise of fanfic or real is that we read ahead in the book to find something neither one of us has read. We don't cheat. We just find something.
Right. We're not even reading ahead. It's mostly been flipping to a page, and there's always been something on that page that has been like, holy crap, this is going to fool Mike type of thing.
Right. And so the obviously those examples are getting a little thinner, but I was still able to eke some out. And of course, the fan fiction is bounteous.
Bounteous, yes. And now you pointed out we're the third results if you search for Ready Player One fan fiction. Is this podcast?
Yeah, with a particular, I think I just searched RP1 numeral 1, and we're the third there. So it may be a quirk of the RP1, but I thought that's
could be just having us looked at it. But yeah, maybe we'll find a new audience that way. I'll go first. I'll read you. I've got two, so we can read them and you can vote.
All right.
Here's the first one. Klingon expert Agent IOI 678324 from Sector Kronos was jacked in and could now see what we were seeing. On the other side of the stone barrow, Klingon language symbols were etched into it. We were all dumbfounded. But 678324 just grinned. He says, the city speaker will show you the next, he informed us with a clenched fist.
Oh, boy. Okay.
It was obviously Klingon there.
Yep. You did a very excellent. Your accent is a little bit southern, but it was nice.
I didn't expel like half of one of my lungs.
You have to protect your microphone equipment from the phlegm when you try to do that.
All right, so that's the Klingon expert.
Sure.
The next one. Dude, Mjolnir is just a bullshit magical Swiss Army knife, Cruz said. Even worse than the Green Lantern's ring. They give that hammer a new power every other week just to get Thor out of whatever asinine fix they've written him into. He smirked. By the way, lots of other people have wielded Mjolnir, including Wonder Woman in a crossover issue. Google it. Your whole argument is invalid, Dial.
Wow. May I say right away, these are both expertly done, because I'm wondering right now, but I think I have my answers.
All right. Let's go. Number one, Klingon expert.
I think because he mentioned Klingon before, I think that may be real.
That is not real. That is from an excerpt I found posted on Reddit. Live to Tell by Codebreaker 2001.
Oh, dang. All right. Well, then that throws my second guess off completely. I'm going to say the second one is real then. Although if the first one were the other way, I'm flipping it now because I honestly thought this one was the fanfic. But I'm assuming you're bringing a real one to the table, so I'm going to say that it's real. All
right. Well, it's kind of a cheat. I flipped through the book and I landed on this, and I was like, "Holy crap! This is gonna throw him." But it comes from the excerpt of Armada that's at the back of our book. So it is written by Ernest Cline, but it's from the next book, which makes sense because we don't know who Cruz and Dial are. But so you can see that he's advanced.
He
in
really
the next
has.
book.
Yeah.
He's really taken that sort of album 2 kind of step.
Right.
It's like the Ramones. It's just one song and run it into the ground.
Yep. Well, I think my challenge to you, I don't know how it'll sit. I'm not gonna pre-guess it. I'm just gonna go through. All right.
Okay.
Because I don't know what you read. So if you came across any of, well, never mind. Again,
sure. Yeah.
Why am I over-explaining this? Yeah. We know what it is. This is one. I knew that calm and slightly stilted voice very well, and now I knew why the arcade looked familiar. I was in the Fox Hills Mall arcade, the setting of the Bishop of Battle. The Bishop of Battle was a memorable sequence of a 1983 horror anthology movie starring a young Emilio Estevez as a punk-rocking video game hustler who has to battle video game enemies that cross over into the real world. That is number one.
Wow.
Number two. Artemis's avatar and my own avatar stood leaning against the left side of the scoreboard, both now wearing that know-it-all grin, and Aech and Shoto's avatar wearing the same grin whilst leaning against the right side of the scoreboard.
Oh, my God. Wow.
And finally, number 3. That bastard will probably get off scot-free, I said. IOI can afford to hire the best lawyers in the world. Yes, they can, Aech said. Then he flashed his Cheshire grin. But now, so can we.
Oh, my God.
It's challenging, isn't it? So first one is the Fox Hills Mall Arcade.
Sure, the Emilio
Estevez.
My guess is that is very well researched and tonally perfect fan fiction.
That is correct.
All right.
It is tonally perfect.
I think that just by the disadvantage of having only 40 pages left. So that was what I think. But yeah, they did their research.
Number 2 is the Artemis's avatar and their own wearing a know-it-all grin and leaning against.
That is one of the worst things I've ever heard read to me in terms of just setting a scene for what I am guessing is a triumphant climactic moment of the book. But I believe it's real.
That is not real.
Oh, damn it.
That is fan fiction. And so number 3, we're talking about the lawyers and the Cheshire grin.
I believe that one. I thought they both were real. I thought they were both going to be from the end of the book.
That one is from the triumphant end. Yeah, that is powerful stuff. I like the second one. You're right, because the weird grammar of the both now wearing that know-it-all grin, and Aech and Shoto's avatar wearing the same grin whilst leaning.
Yes,
they really captured the Klein, syntax there.
Had me fooled. Wow.
Yeah, so that was fanfic or real, and I think we're batting pretty much. We're probably all about 500 on this, right? Because it really is a coin flip. I mean, it's just.
It seems like every time we do it, I have one that I'm like stepping away from the mic in shock that I've missed it.
Right. All right. So let's pick up the plot again. So he's in his cubicle, and then he's going to his coffin and laying down at night.
Yeah. So essentially, what we're going to get here is, I really think it's pure uncut Klein. Like for a long time during this whole series of like his plan, we're going to see sort of the cultural illusions disappear, and we just get pure plot and description, like without any of those familiar crutches that we've seen throughout the book. And it does not go well, I believe.
No, it doesn't go well. And we also see him turn on something that's puzzled us from the beginning is, supposed to be funny or unintentionally funny. And it is literally impossible to tell the difference because you from the way that he writes it, you cannot tell. There's so many unintentionally funny sentences, as witnessed by Dumb Sentence of the Week, that when he does try to spin out a gag or two, they come across so bizarrely that it really is impossible to tell. And this was stuffed with that, I think.
Yeah. The first one, shows up very early on as he heads to his customer service booth and has to deal with a angry Gunter named Hot Cock 007.
Yep. That's is that supposed to be sort of piercing satire? Is it a broad joke? It's, again, impossible to tell because
it makes me feel bad about any time I've ever made a screen name joke. That's for sure.
But this is 2044. Is that the year?
Sure. It sounds about right.
2044, and people are still doing that.
Yeah. So there's roving marauders, irradiated hordes, 2-year lines at Arby's to get jobs, and people are still logging on, in their malnourished state, impoverished outside, and that's what they are entering into their Oasis advisor the first time they want to log on. Hot Cock 007.
Yep. And even before that, I'll point to this bit of biting satire because he's kind of describing, obviously, a soulless office environment, and the satire being that they're all sort of chained into their cubicles, man. And because that, we've never seen that before, but which is not a disqualification. He just, he just does it poorly. But he says he's allowed to hang up artwork in his cubicle, and one of the things he references is the the cat hanging from a clothesline, and
Yes,
with an
hang in there,
admonition to
baby
hang in.
cat.
He doesn't actually say the hang, but he references the hang in their baby poster. So society had collapsed many years before, but damn it, you can't get rid of those hang in their baby posters.
There probably is some factory that's in Iowa that has the rights to that images where they just sort of print those out daily, and they're still going strong in this era.
Yeah, I just like that he's in 2044 is satirizing, office workers from 1971. So keep it up, man. They deserve it.
Well, something that I liked in this part was So I looked at the back of the book this week. I was looking at the back cover text, and I realized that what we talked about last week, where it's sort of that sentence where he was like, the cops, the drop cops, I finally realized what was going to happen. They were going to take me outside. And we sort of realized that was sort of he's going for a alienation from the real world type of thing, which we said has been done not very well. But that's sort of emphasized on the back of the book. The last line of the summary is like, if Wade's going to survive, he'll have to win and confront the real world he's always been so desperate to escape. So that's sort of like the publisher being like, this is the broader theme of this book. It's not just references to 80s garbage. And so this has another incident of that, of like, he's in the real world now. He says, I'd grown to despise the other indents almost as much as the customers. And he later on walks past a stream of sullen university students. And he's just a giant dick who's entered into this area with all these other people for the first time. And he just is instantly shutting down and being like, I hate these people. I'm not even going to try. Like, they're slaves. He later on sort of wonders if the office drones at IOI feel any sympathy for them. But he immediately is like, screw these people. I hate everyone else around me.
Yeah, he is. If you did the recut trailer of this, if this were a movie, the recut of it, he is the villain in this.
Oh yeah,
no doubt about it.
He's like a less charming Holden Caulfield or Travis Bickle or something.
Exactly. Yeah, and he referenced the. I think a number of times he uses different combinations of the word, like soulless corporate monsters and stuff like that.
Right.
And really, you do at a certain point, you go, who hurt you, man? I mean, what happened to you
Right.
from this corporation? I mean, I assume you threw your Apple into a cauldron, all your Macs and everything, and burnt them in a
right
in a crucible while you cursed their names. Like what is, because he never really actually names their crime other than they're cheating at that game. They're cheating to try to get which is, that's...
And they threw the guy off the 43rd floor of his skyscraper. I mean,
yeah, but that happens kind of deep into the novel when he's already referenced them as evil many, many, many times.
Yes, they didn't get
They're
the nickname
upcharging him
Suxors for murdering. Yeah, they got
Right.
Suxor for throttling traffic to Netflix on
Right.
peak viewing hours.
They're being kind of lame, man. So they deserve death. But do you want me to? I'll get to what I thought was the real twist of this story.
All right.
And it comes maybe 3 pages into this new section that we read when he's an indentured servant. Because remember the drama of being yanked from his room with the torches and everything, the like cutting torches that the various cages that he'd set around himself, and he puts a piece of incendiary in his computer and melts it down just in time because he had built that second like platinum or titanium cage to keep them off another 3 minutes. So he had a little more time.
Yeah.
And then he, lays on the floor and is taken away by them. And so, wow, this is quite a dramatic moment. But then the twist comes 3 pages later, when he tells us that he meant to become an indentured servant to IOI, which is, I mean, it's kind of irrelevant because we'd either guessed it 3 pages ago, or it doesn't matter because he told us in the 2 pages before this that he already had their codes and was sabotaging them actively already. So the fact that he meant to do it is utterly irrelevant. He says he had bought the codes to break into their system at an auction several years before, just as I don't know, seems like it'd be fun to have.
Yeah, he bought it from the Elite Hackser warehouse, which is evidently the most useful site on the internet because you can get a new identity, You can get codes to sabotage IOI. And for a company where they emphasize that Nolan Sorrento was, sniping bids eBay style at the last minute to buy the orb of healing or whatever, he's evidently unaware of this site that would probably solve all of their problems. It would,
Yeah.
It would sort of be like us if some guy was operating, the Riftrex depot where he sold all our products for, $1, and we just were unaware of that going on.
Right. But it's another instance of him. I talked to a friend last night who was reluctantly reading along. He finished the book, and he's listening to the podcast, and he said, unbidden from me, he said, God, he really is a master of dissipating his own lame tension. Like, he's, as soon as he backs into a bit of like, oh, what will happen next, he immediately dissipates it.
No, so this happens very quickly here. Someone wrote in to point it out. Forgive me for not remembering who it was, but he says, the first time he tries the password, he says, I held my breath. Like, if it didn't work, I had just sold myself into a lifetime of slavery.
Right.
And then within, I believe it was 3 pages later, he says, by the way, I had arranged for the funds to be transferred here so I could buy myself out of this. So there was, it was like you said, an unreliable narrator. There was never a chance of lifetime slavery. The drama is provided that the funds that were going to allow him to spring himself aren't going to arrive until like 3 days until he needs them.
Right. So then we get in, at least to me, I felt the timeline was again muddled, because he talks about sort of the drudgery of being there. There's right. Sort of an allusion to that, like but then every night when I went to bed, I would fake my image up there. He's lying in some sort of coffin thing, like a very small, you get the impression of, like Kramer's drawer full of Japanese tourists or something, right?
Or like, one of those commuter pods that businessmen in Asia will sleep in.
Yeah, he talks about how, he barely has room to move. He, switches on a thing, and night vision goes on and watches him, but he has tricked the system.
Yes, he goes to great efforts to describe this plan. When earlier in the book, he would have said, you remember how in Speed they rigged the camera? So it was just showing them that it's that they did that.
Yeah. And so he works.
Cliche that he's.
Yeah. So he talks about working, toiling every night when he goes to bed. And then he says, within this sequence, he says he felt like a prisoner in an old prison movie, a convict in an old prisoner movie. Yet in this, again, he couldn't come up with a classic 80s example.
Yes,
and he also watched classic movies from the 40s, remember, which every other one was a prison movie.
Yes. And I'm sure that's a cliche from everything else, the most popular and highest rated movie of all time on the IMDb involves that exact thing. It's very much associated with the Shawshank Redemption, which clearly Wade would have memorized. So
right. But come to find out, he hasn't been locked in this sub-basement lifestyle, this dungeon. He hasn't been spooning out little bits of earth, so to speak, with his spoon, as he references at one point, for years, in that sort of the bizarre tension that happens in all of these movies where, oh my gosh, will I be discovered? Will years of my work go away? No, this is like day 2.
Right. Yes. We didn't get much of this before, but evidently he is a world-class hacker. This is something that in between games of Pong and the Smurfs Atari game, he's developed these amazing intranet busting skills. And
there was the Family Ties where Mallory did bust out of the Supermax prison with a spoon.
But I don't know if you've ever installed a weird custom firmware on something. Like I have done it before, and even if you have followed like directions to a T, like I rigged my Wii so that it could play old Nintendo games, and it's this nail-biting process of like every other line is like, you will brick your system if you don't do this immediately, in all caps, like, do not do this, like, I'd turn back if I were you. And so it's like, I'm an intelligent person and I am capable of doing this, and I was just like pacing as I do these things. It was not a very easy thing to do, and yet this dipshit walks in here and is all of a sudden like, click click click, we're into the
The most sophisticated
Yes.
bit of software ever created in human history. Yep.
And so it's, we've done many movies where there's hacking scenes, all stuff like that, and it's impossible to maintain any sort of tension or drama with that because it's just a guy typing. And even when they do a crappy visual representation of hacking in and then files, transferring, it looks fake when they do that. So my favorite hacking scene is in Swordfish, where Hugh Jackman is like,
oh yeah,
he's like smoking cigs and like, spinning around in his chair and like pumping his fist at things. It's a really great scene. But so even when you try to make it look interesting, it ends up looking comical. So
yeah, and he also, I swore I would get back to this, the reference to Brazil. He says, and this struck me as funny, sort of weird. He says he's also creating non-existent employees to ship stuff to. So
Yes.
he obviously has a fair amount of freedom where he can just walk over to other cubicles and put on a fake mustache and go, yeah, I'm Jim,
Yes.
whatever. And he doesn't really paint a picture of this, but he says and also it was a kind of a parenthetical, like, then I slipped on this, which I had, obviously had shipped to a fake employee. And then the name was parenthetical, Sam Lowry. And I thought that was so funny because it was in parentheses. And then I just realized, oh, obviously this is a wink and a nod. Like, there's no reason to do this. And that is the main character in Brazil.
Oh, wow.
Although it's spelled differently. But I just thought that is the clumsiest way to go.
Yeah, it's
I'm doing a Brazil thing here, folks.
In parentheses. Wow.
Yeah.
It is like it's putting Brazil reference in a footnote.
Yeah. Why he didn't say like that classic movie from the 80s, Brazil.
Right.
It's just what is his, why not do that?
That's hilarious. And yeah, there was another thing as he's hacking and stuff. We talked about the delay in consequences earlier. This was one that struck me as really good. He's hacking and he says, I uncovered a restricted area called the Star Chamber. It was the only area of the database I couldn't seem to access. So I used my admin ID to create a new test account, then gave that account super user access and full administrative privileges. It worked and I was granted access. So like, there's not even a time to like pause and like take the deep breath of shock that he's not going to be able to do this.
You just, you really feel like he didn't want to go through the trouble of then describing another couple days, before he got in, or some tension of someone going, what's going on here?
Right.
Fake guy. Oh, what are you doing? Oh no, now I was really caught. I quickly
Right. Well, that does happen. A woman texts him as he's walking out to tell him his ear is bleeding, and he just says, oh, thanks.
Yeah, he leaves. That was another moment.
So I don't know if you thought that him being able to just get boots of speed or a teleporting, earring to make his fake spaceship travel, those were even rendered more drama free by just hacking. In fact, Mike, you may even want to call him a Deus Ex Hackina. Hello.
Yeah.
Hello. Anyone?
I'm back. Yeah.
And but so yeah, he gets into the files and he was able to find all the information about people. And the first thing he does is look up Artemis's real persona, which is a very moving scene.
It is.
Because he finds out that Artemis does in fact look exactly like her avatar, except for a red wine or port wine birthmark that's on one side of her face.
Yep, she's got kind of a Gorbachev thing going. So she puts her hair over it, kind of her eye, Veronica Lake style. Am I right, Connor? Hello, is anybody there? Yes. So he was right in his assessment of people, which he did somewhat haphazardly. I always got the feeling that his or her avatar looked exactly like the person, but he was very inconsistent on that, and it turns out in every case he was pretty much right.
Right, and so he says that the face I saw in the photo seemed even more beautiful to me than that of her avatar because I knew this one was real. So he's like entering into the realm of, we called it performative atheism in the very beginning of the book. He's going into like performative nice guyness in this section where it like, if you doubted that he was going to end up finding her beautiful, no matter what, or in spite of her flaws, like this is just him going sort of above and beyond to, sure, okay, fine, that's you can do that, but it struck me as just a very, here I am, like I'm accepting of this, of this flaw. Look at me, like
He's trying to, in the classic movie parlance, he's trying to save the cat. But you're supposed to do that in Act 1, not Act 7 or whatever the hell we're in right now.
Right.
Because we've already shown that he's an antisocial dick. And then this is supposed to be his redeeming quality here.
Right. And it's still fueled by horniness.
Yes.
I don't think he would have found her more beautiful if she turned out to be, a dude with a flat top that played tight end in college football.
Yeah, if she was in fact hairy knuckled Chuck, which he constantly referenced, what? I guess, if he was a truly progressive dude, he'd have to say I was every bit as much in love with hairy knuckled Chuck as I ever was before.
Well, we will get to that because that rears its
Yes,
head.
Indeed. That's a trick he goes to. Let me just point out this little detail about when he discovers the plot as he opens up the files of all his Gunter friends, our main heroes. He says he sat there in stunned silence. So usually, now keep in mind, we already knew they were trying to kill them. These people are all on the run from them because they are actively trying to kill them.
Attempted murder of one and literal murder of another.
Yes. But he says he discovers this plot. And so when he sees it, he sits there in stunned silence. So usually he chatters away to himself in his coffin while he's watching this stuff. But also...
Right, he is. He's going Hugh Jackman style. He's being like, come on. Yes.
But then in his coffin, he also managed to sit up for this. I just noted that. He's laying down in his little bed, pretending to be asleep. But for this one, he sat in stunned silence. So,
oh man. Well, yeah. So he's, he keeps hacking, and he gets a new ankle bracelet that he gives Mr. Tuttle is another identity that he takes.
Also from Brazil, yes.
Okay, wonderful.
Yeah. Why doesn't he tell us that in this one? I guess it just
there's a phrase we could use to identify this, but I'll spare us having to say it. But people will get it. He says, Mr. Tuttle, I'd given the fictional Mr. Tuttle complete access to the entire building, then reprogrammed my indent ankle so that it was encoded with the Tuttle ID, making it function just like one of the security bracelets the maintenance techs wore, which is high drama, as he just flawlessly does this thing. But I just wondered if this was information that he just sort of bought for, a relative pittance, since he's using he once again said a meager salary. Why is this just not something that everyone is doing, changing your ID and hacking and doing this all the time? It seems like there's just nothing stopping anybody from doing all of this in the real world, and the world should be chaos. And I don't know.
Yeah, no, he I guess they just don't have a login to the Elite Suxer warehouse or whatever the hell that's called.
Sure.
Or the hacker
he's waiting
warehouse.
on an invite from like a guy on
right, exactly, invite only.
The IRC channel.
Yeah.
Well, the other thing that I thought of this, he takes off the ankle bracelet finally, and he notes that he has a braided red skin underneath there, which was a brand new word to me. It's another case of the legalese word that came up in the last segment. But
yeah, I think sometimes he does dive to the thesaurus and tries to find something to give it a little more pizzazz, but he does it so infrequently. He should have. I mean, I didn't know what he was talking about because it wasn't referencing a movie where someone had a red circle under their ankle bracelet. So,
but then he ends up getting the hell out of Dodge for the third time.
Yep, he does actually say it. Get the hell out of Dodge. Yeah.
Right.
But before he does, though, remember you referenced it earlier. I didn't really understand what was happening, but the gear that he had to wear was sort of stapled into his head.
Yeah,
right? Or riveted.
Yeah,
I didn't. I guess I either glossed that over or didn't realize what was going on. So how does that work? Is it just like you get them like earrings or something, and they're just always in there, jammed into your ears?
Yeah, I guess it was sort of just a wearable implant on the first, when he went through that weird delousing chamber and stuff, they stuck those onto you as well.
It doesn't seem like a thing that would stop many people from, like people play with their earlobes all the time with gauges and shit like that. It doesn't seem like that big of a deal to just go, this is annoying as hell. I'm just going to rip them out of my head. Then what are they going to do? Now I just have a big red sore there. They can't attach them there, so I don't know. Anyway, that just struck me as odd.
Well, so he does get the hell out, and he immediately heads to a mailbox, etc. store.
Yeah, UPS store, mailboxes, etc., which is unmanned. It's just and he what's his name from Shawshank Redemption style. We now learned he had all this other things stashed there.
Sure, he had a top of the line rig that he had bought on his meager salary. That was stashed there. He didn't have a full haptic suit, but he had some sort of. He introduces some new clothes that are like partially haptic that you can wear in order to still make some movements. I guess he had a name for it. I didn't write it down.
Yeah, in case
too late in the book for this kind of bullshit.
Right, in case he wanted to go into a chat link and have his transparent avatar available. I mean, you need to have that there.
But then, so he goes to a clothing store, I guess, or the plug first.
He gets the rig, and then he heads to the clothing store. And this I noted was a very funny. Again, this is one of those. You tell me whether this is supposed to be funny or not.
All right.
He goes to a store called Threads, spelled with a 3, the numeral 3 in the place of the E. That's a tick of his.
Sure.
He buys his stuff, leaves, and says he exited the store dressed in his new threads without the 3 spelling. And now this is my guess that that's not supposed to be funny because he would have spelled it the same. And I suspect that he only knows 2 words for clothing. And so he just...
Right. Well, it could be like the Threads Corporation could be like Google or Xerox, where they have like a lengthy series of like usage things that they distribute to the media, where it's like, listen, you don't Google something, you run a Google branded search to find that information.
Kleenex we do not like. It is a Kleenex tissue brand. Yes.
So maybe he's just respecting the well-known edicts that they've put out to the post-apocalyptic society.
Well, good on him then. I really like that.
But then he goes to the sort of internet cafe called The Plug, which he is aware of because even though they've got outdated equipment and stuff, they have connections that were supposed to be fast, reliable, and lag-free, which seems like every connection he encounters has not been a bad connection. There's never been a time where he's been
stutter
daunting.
Or a pixelation or anything.
Right.
It's been seamless, smooth as glass everywhere he's gone.
Which is fortunate because the sort of the plot of the book depends on that. But I just noted that there's never he moved across the country in order to get these fancy connections when the one seemed to be doing just fine. Maybe it's just upgrading syndrome that these geeks have. They always want something better.
Right.
But so he meets like a mohawked sullen guy who rents him a serious rig for uploading, but he tells him
yes, I have this written down.
He's like, hey man, do you have the exact phrasing?
I do. He tells him that he has to keep his deposit if there's a mess in the bay. Vomit, urine, semen, that kind of thing. You've hit the highlights there. I mean, right. Are there any more I could... The
trifecta? I mean, one of them, unfortunately has to be a bit more common, I would hope. Like, unless you're doing some... Yeah, I'd put him in reverse order, I would guess.
I just would have laughed out loud if he had some follow-up questions. So, like earwax, I'll usually take care of that.
What's the diameter on the semen puddle where it crosses into full deposit keeping? Like,
and you didn't say anything about number 2, so I'm just going to
right. Yeah.
Look, come on, pal, don't bust my balls.
Monitors wipe down pretty easily, so that should not be the same if it's on there as if it is on the chair, because that's going to stain, obviously.
Oh man. Lot
Yeah,
of
so
lot of rig talk. I would just note that chapter. We kept going from rig to rig.
it is full of it. And if there's one thing that I can really take away from this, we've had a lot of fun doing this. A lot of people have enjoyed listening to it. But the parlance of hell of a rig, if there's one thing that we've contributed, it is that people have attached that, and people have seen that cow image. So it's all been worth it for that to me.
It is. Oh, finally your dream realized,
Yes,
Connor.
exactly. Yeah, the long con. So he logs in, and he's about to he's going to do some serious uploading of his zettabyte. I didn't even look up what that was. I just figured it was the next step up from terabyte or 2 steps up. Who cares?
Yep.
But then he's going to log into H's basement where the rest of the remaining high five are waiting for him.
Mm-hmm.
And so he gets there, and he's sort of explaining him. He does a condensed version of his hacking exploits, which he tells to a rapt audience. He says, Shoto looked at me in awe as he finishes detailing, like, so yeah, I went there, and then I faked a requisition form, and get this, Shoto, I used the name of one of the characters from Brazil. Oh yeah, like, how are you holding up after your best friend got thrown off that roof, by the way?
No. Instead, they're all there. There was like 3 high fives and fist bumps and everything, as he describes each utterly mundane step in this routine that we all already saw.
Already have heard.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, and so he's still like sort of doing the goggle-eyed, like banging himself on a head with the cartoon mallet thing about Artemis, like, stammering over his words.
Which she is furious that he peeked into her file to find the plot against her, which she already knew. And but then that is dissipated 1 sentence later.
Oh yeah, it was amazing. She seems just on this horrible roller coaster of emotions. She's like, you couldn't resist looking at them, and then H says, chill out, he probably saved your life. She seemed to consider this fine. Like, what hadn't you considered about that? Like, you fled your house to a I don't remember what city she's in. She's but she's in a public internet cafe, having left behind everything she did without saying goodbye. But she's like not considered the implications of what it took to get her there. Yes. She does that throughout the scene. Towards the end of it, she sort of is, Wade is going to send out this email to everybody, warning every gunter about this and stuff. And then, so he explains this whole thing, and she's like, you're right, that email just might work. Next paragraph. But how many of them will actually fight? Most of them are probably just going to set up lawn chairs and eat popcorn while they watch us get our asses kicked. It's like, so is it going to work or not? Like,
that is even more up and down than that. Then later... Yeah. Later on, can I skip ahead because it's right on this? He said, because we still have more. We're not out of the basement yet.
Yeah.
So the huge part of the plan hinges on him sending out an email to all the other Gunters to join them for this battle to try to get rid of the dome that the IOI has set up to protect the castle. You know the drill. And then he says, oh, but most of them will get caught up in people's spam filters. So I also posted them on the boards.
Yes.
Why didn't you mention this earlier? Maybe that's a deep flaw. First of all, they may read it and laugh at it, and that's fully acknowledged. Yeah, sure, that could happen. And also, it could just get in their spam filter. Unbelievable.
Yeah, I got an email like yesterday from a place in Montreal where I bought like cooking spices from 2 years ago. If you swipe your credit card through Square, sometimes you unknowingly get entered into that. So that made it through my spam filter. But an email from an actual person warning you about the impending apocalypse, that's going to still be tripped up by a spam filter in the 3 decades from now.
Can I just ask, Connor, are you buying Montreal steak seasoning directly from Montreal? Is that
you got to go to the source?
Okay.
It's smuggling it across the border is what makes it taste better. It was that we did buy it and bought a Korean spice rub. It was a cool place. They're inexpensive.
Wait! But you bought the Korean spice from the same place, huh? You didn't go to Korea for that? You cultural appropriator.
I failed in my spice gunting. But yeah, so even after Artemis says that, she sort of does this whole like wild mood swing and stuff, and then she ends by saying, "You two are actually going to go along with this?" as if there's they've spent the whole time talking about the plan and being like ready to go out the door, and then she has that sort of so he loves this wildly unstable sour woman
Yes.
because she has a mild birthmark on her face. So
she sort of toys with him during all those chats earlier. She disappears for weeks. She leaves him in the zero gravity punk dance hall, whatever that was.
She gives him the finger as he's standing outside her planet holding up a boombox for 3 consecutive hours. But yeah.
But so then they all sit. So the 5 of them sit. Well, 4, I guess, right? 4 of them.
Yeah.
And watch the video as Sorrento inside the what's the castle called? Cathonia or whatever.
Yeah,
I don't know.
Anorak's castle.
Yeah. They have the key, but they can't open it, so they sit there and sort of mock him for as he tries there, because they're looking from the stolen files. They're seeing the recording of Sorrento trying to break through this gate,
right?
And he tries once, and he kind of describes in like a small paragraph how he turned the key to the right, and then he said the words or whatever, and then the video cuts, and then he describes the next paragraph where he turns the key then to the left in the other direction. Yes,
clever bastard.
Thank you for that description. I assume he jiggled it both ways, so we don't need to.
He pulled it out and blew on it like a Nintendo cartridge just to make sure there wasn't any graphite on it or anything.
And then, but Shoto, I remember, I don't have it written down, but he gets off a good one in that one because he said, "Oh, next," they're mocking him. He goes, "Next, he'll be poking his pinky finger in it." And then Shoto goes, "Yeah, that's probably going to be his next move." That's what I was implying.
You're dead weight, Shoto. But yeah, so they are observing him, and they realize that there is a clue on the actual like arch above the door where it says charity, hope, and faith. Mm-hmm. And so they're trying to sort of piece where that came from, and H gets a really good one off because they're thinking that maybe it came from Corinthians, I think it was.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
because those words are mentioned in it, and they're also the names of saints or something. But H sort of strokes his goatee and goes, "Morons! Halliday was an atheist," which is just it's just something that you've put in there in order to just set up that clever jibe.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah, because atheists often don't, know about religion and run away from it. No, they're usually completely ignorant of it.
Regardless of what you believe, it's probably influenced. Like, that's probably where the thing that ends up coming from probably got it from. Like, it's been around a little bit longer than the movies from the 40s that you occasionally watch. But anyway, they end up determining what it was, and it turns out that it's a Schoolhouse Rock song from the popular 1980s year of 1973.
Classic 80s,
which is just pick and choose. And so, sure, I guess if these were airing during Saturday morning cartoons, they probably aired for a while longer, but it just sort of, he's not playing by his own rules.
Yeah, I found that to be that was a head slapper. Like, oh, for God's sake, especially when it was followed up with the import that they put on it. So again, I don't know if he's trying to be funny, but this is Artemis. He says about them not knowing this. Dilettantes, Artemis said. Yes. It's their own fault for not knowing all the Schoolhouse Rock lyrics by heart. How did those fools even get this far?
Yes.
Like,
he says,
what?
And then he says, by cheating, remember? And she says, oh, that's right. I keep forgetting. She grinned at me and I felt my knees go all rubbery. Because she's a dumbass who isn't aware of the settings of this thing that she's devoted the past 6 years of her life to. It's
But let me go back to it. Do you think that he meant this? It to me is almost impossible that it not be meant as satire, and yet I can't give him that credit. It's their own fault for not knowing all the Schoolhouse Rock lyrics by heart. Now, if he hadn't memorized everything that he's ever mentioned before, right. Then I would think that, well, maybe that's a clever line on how, pop obsessed everyone is. And I'm sure there are many theories that that's the whole point of the book, man. You're missing it. We're all dead to what's real because we're doing this stuff. But you can't have it both ways is all I'm saying.
Right. And we've also established that they do have a, team of hundreds working on this. So it's silly to assume that anyone would not memorize this because they just have, if they'd see those words and it would be like, all right, army of 48 guys, like get to work Googling every single combination of that.
Yeah, and I'm sure there's an algorithm to just like search those words and cross-reference them against everything in all of history, and so that would have popped up, and they would have tried that. So,
yeah. So I don't know. Dilettantes was another word that sort of seemingly came out of nowhere, but.
Yeah, for him, I mean, let's be honest. I think if you ran this through one of those, what are those crude things where they look at word length? We were talking about that before, and patterns and everything. I think you'd say this was like a third.
Raise a red flag.
Sure. Well, third or fourth grade level, and then so the word dilettantes and stuff coming up is just a little. It just seems like occasionally he does reach for a thesaurus or something.
But the scene where they sort of puzzle out the Schoolhouse Rock, where they're all sort of they're saying a sentence, and then the camera is panning, and the other one's completing the thought as their smiles grow on their faces. It comes up later when he recites his password, and it's a tribute to the movie Sneakers, which I hadn't thought about in a long time. But that was one of the first movies that I saw, saw it in the theater, saw it later in life, and was like, boy, this is actually very bad. And that's the only thing I remember. Well, I remember two things about it. One of them is I think about it every time I go over a bridge where Robert Redford was in the trunk of a car, and he was able to simulate the sound of the tires going over like the bolts in the bridge, and they were able to determine what bridge he was in San Francisco based on that, which is it fits in well in this universe.
Yeah.
This impossible task that anyone who was drugged and beaten in the back of a car would be attuned to what the bridge sounded like. Right. But the other thing I remember is that they solve a lot of puzzles essentially by, the camera pans to Robert Redford, and he's like, it was foggy last night. Dan Aykroyd's like, one of those bridges would have been in the fog, and it pans to was Sidney Poitier in that, and they just sort of finish each other's sentences in that way. So maybe this is a subtle tribute to the 1989 techno thriller Sneakers.
Yes. Well, the password reference also had Tron in it, so it's hard to tease out which one is taking over at any given point. But then a huge, shocking revelation.
Yes.
In their secure, this is a chat room, right? Not a chat link.
Not a chat link. No.
Chat room.
God, Mike.
I know. I'm sorry. It's deep in the book, and I'm
240 pages into this book.
I know. I'm sorry. I didn't have that window open in my goggles to see that.
You spent 3 pages describing the differences. For not.
Connor, drum roll, and who appears? The great and powerful
Oggy.
Oggy. Oi. Yes. Og, Halliday's business partner and friend, we learn.
Yes. He's been there before. He knocked over a thing of video game manuals or something, and no one thought anything of it. But it turns out that he has his own ability to hack the system. He's a super user in this system, and that means he can do whatever he wants. So that's really fun, too, because the rules don't matter at all.
And what he wants to do is spy on 17-year-old chat rooms, says Og. And yes. So he does indeed.
Spy on 17-year-old chat rooms and browse vintage role-playing game supplements, yes. Which he walks over to that shelf and does, again, for the third time in the book. Someone has browsed vintage role-playing game supplements on a shelf full of them.
Oh, man. So speaking of Deus Ex Machina, he appears and tells them. So they already have their plan formulated to take the gate, which is covered, again, by these domes. They are sending out the email. They're going to gather all the Gunters and Parzival. I don't know. Whatever. Wade. Wade has pre-programmed the shields disintegrating at a certain point, and so that plan is already in place, and the Gunters are going to come in. But Og comes in and says he wants to help them out to keep the game fair.
Yes,
that's his. So he appears as a Deus Ex referee, kind of in this last moment. He's not really necessary to the plot, which is why I thought it was sort of it's less of a gaspy moment, because he set up the tension that they're going to do this big battle, and they hope that everyone gets there. So it's kind of like Gandalf riding in when we had forgotten that Gandalf was in the film at all. It's like, oh, Gandalf, that's right, you're here, and I will help you. Oh, okay. I mean, I think we're good, but But yeah, it's nice. I appreciate
better
the
with
gesture.
You than without you, sure.
Yeah. We're all, we're slightly more happy about this, but
where did you come from? I don't know. Well, tell me after the battle.
Yeah, exactly. So he offers to fly them to his estate. Speaking of Gandalf and Tolkien, and he sends private jets for them, and they head off to his estate. Well, not all of them are in private jets, isn't that right, Connor?
Yeah, no, some of them are. They have to be in a RV first, and that's going to be Aech is going to come and pick up Wade himself, and so that may be the whole reason for this is that Ogg shows up so that they can meet each other in person, because it's one of the biggest shocks of the book so far when Wade finally gets to meet Aech in the flesh.
Yes, reveal it. Go ahead. This is two huge reveals in almost as many pages.
Right. So it turns out that Aech is not the bro he thought he was. She is a fat African-American lesbian.
Yes, and I think she uses the word. She corrects him and says "fat black chick," right?
Fat black chick, sure.
Yeah.
All right.
So that's the
table.
Yep, that's the book's words, not ours.
So yeah, she's the opposite of everything that he thought. So it gives him another opportunity to sort of wrestle with how he feels about this.
Well, one thing remains constant with this large African-American woman and her avatar, Aech, and that constancy is the Cheshire grin.
Yes, it's there in real life too.
Yes. So she has elements of herself in the avatar of Aech.
But he's comforted by the grin, but it quickly quickly says that the shock gave way to a sense of betrayal. How could she deceive me all these years?
Yeah, one wonders that.
You just you stroke your head and be like, how many times?
Yes.
Like, it's just the running theme of the I don't know. Like
you have posited this a dozen times yourself, sir.
Right. Yes. And so, and then he sort of says, like, mom used H's mom. He's given the backstory. She used a white male avatar because of the marked difference it made in how she was treated and the opportunities she was given. And we sort of said this early on when he's talking to Artemis. Is like, why would everyone not be we said a hot chick or a white person? Like, what unless everyone is a Titanic dumbass like Wade, who assumes that everyone looks like what they look like despite decades of contrariness. Why would these old prejudices exist? It doesn't make any sense.
I thought H's mom got some pretty unfair treatment. She's introduced and like, my mom did this and this to kind of, to protect me, blah, blah, blah. And then, but then when I told her about my sexuality or whatever, which this is the first we're all hearing of it,
Yeah.
I was like, she was not for it. She kicked me out. So it turns out my mom is pretty prejudiced herself. Like, we just met mom. Do we have to turn her into a monster immediately?
Right.
She raised and protected her daughter. Like, she's a bigot.
Gave her the good advice, to give her the white guy avatar and stuff.
I just felt bad for two-sentence mom there. That's all.
Right. It is sort of like the ant. Like every person that someone lives with in this book is a wretched person who's a rolled doll villain.
Right. But I did notice something about the physical description of Aech that I found curious. She had like jeans on and a T-shirt or something, and she had. He described her dark or chocolate skin or something, and then says Aech had kinky hair. And I said to myself, well, what? That must be hell when she gets in and out of rigs, huh? Isn't everybody else all clean shaven
they've gone powdery and I guess she's maintaining. She wasn't as committed to the cause of not having to spend the 10 seconds a day washing your hair. I don't know.
I don't know, but it just struck me. Whoa, because how did the censors get past the hair? And I don't know. He said that it didn't work well if you had, so he just got rid of it, and most everyone does.
Right.
So,
Artemis doesn't, because she puts it over her birthmark too.
I guess they don't. So when they're doing anything that, like, if they're walking through a waterfall to find the 2112 guitar and stuff, then the water doesn't hit them on the head like a bundle of sticks. I don't know how
Maybe he read some weird like 4-hour gunting blog that was like, listen, like you're a total idiot if you don't shave your entire body hair in order to do this. And so he did it and then was like, wait, we're all not doing this? Like, oh, God. I've been following one of the weird blogs.
And then like, all the gunters switch on the light right at that moment. You shaved your body.
The rest of you are storing your urine in jars, though, right? Like that was the...
I'm sure it was just maybe if you want to get that last 2% out of your H1000 rig,
right.
So that was it. He's just more committed.
Yes, exactly. But then, so he's sort of, he's puzzling about H and stuff, but he's very quickly realizes that he's still like this is his soulmate. And he says, I realize that we already did know each other as well as any two people could. We'd known each other for years in the most intimate way possible. We'd connected on a purely mental level. I understood her, trusted her, and loved her as a dear friend. And so I just want to refresh your memory about some of their most intimate ways, their connection on a purely mental level where they've established trust and love.
Oh man, I wish I had some of that tender like sitcom music as we flash back to a friendship. But yeah, give it to us.
Blow me, H. How many times have you seen that sap fest? I know you've made me sit through it at least twice. He was baiting me now. He knew Lady Hawk was one of my guilty pleasures and that I'd seen it over 24 times. I was doing you a favor by making you watch it, noob, I said, shoving a new cartridge into the Intellivision console and starting up a single-player game of Astro Smash. You'll thank me one day. Wait and see. Lady Hawk is canon. Surely you must be joking. No, I am not joking, and don't call me Shirley. There's no way Halliday was a fan of Lady Hawk. I guarantee it. Where's your proof, dipshit?
Oh man, you can feel the love. I trust her more than anyone.
He loves her brain. Here's another one. This is him talking about once he's discovered he's going to have to play Joust. He says, I finally got good enough to beat H repeatedly and consistently. Then I began to gloat over him, savoring my revenge. The last time we'd played, I'd rubbed his nose in defeat so mercilessly that he'd flipped out and vowed never to play me again. So his Joust,
feel the love.
His Joust mockery is just sort of that brotherly love.
That's the kind of things. Oh yes, that is definitely, that's the philos, the love that is as strong as erotic love, but it's just even deeper.
Those guys who were, storming the beach at Normandy when they were on the boats, they were being like, we marry few. This is sort of what they were united by. This calling each other crap burgers and stuff like that.
Yeah, but you know that's what he was trying to get to. That's the kind of depth he was looking for there.
And I guess she is a lesbian because you have to avoid that minefield of like, well, why doesn't he love this person? So he's like, no, we're taking it off the table. He loves the hot chick with the birthmark versus the fat black chick because she couldn't. Like that's the one he relates to very well and spends all his time hanging out with. So he just he made that impossible.
But if he really wanted to go further with this, like, okay, make it a woman, go ahead and keep it a lesbian, make her 65 years old and a chain smoker and chains on her belt loops and smoking and hey, so you're Parzival, huh? It's good to meet you. I loved her as much as I'd ever loved anyone. But no, she's much more lovable in person. Thank God for him.
Well, I want to share a very thorough and detailed email we got. So can we hit the theme music for that?
Yes, indeed.
We're going to the party. We're going to the game. We're going to the disco. We're going to cruise out, man. We're stealing people's mail. Stealing people's mail. Stealing people's mail.
All right, let's steal some people's mail. What do you got for us?
I'm happy to steal this one because this one is a really good email. The stuff that I didn't notice, but it's from Melody F, who has been wanted to comment on Ernest Cline's complete failure to grasp how linear time works, which is something we talked about earlier. But this is from this chapter when Wade meets H. So I'm just going to read it. Cline has Wade describe H as a young woman about my age, so we can assume late teens to the very early 20s, since Wade is 18 at this point. A few pages later, when they reach the Columbus airport, H is nervous about leaving her RV since it had been her home for many years. Those two data points tell me that H has lived in the RV since maybe her mid-teens. Yet on the next page, H reveals she's only a few months older than Wade, so she's barely 18 or 19, barely 19 or 18. So she's 19 years old, has been living in the RV, moving from place to place for many years. So many is 3 at the most, assuming that you still need a driver's license in this dystopian post-apocalyptic future.
Mm-hmm.
So it's very confusing, but it doesn't seem to add up. And then it keeps going. But wait, H told me that she hadn't seen or spoken to her mother since leaving home on her 18th birthday. Plus she was homeless for a little while, living in shelters until she earned enough money to buy her RV. So between the date of her 18th birthday and the day she meets Wade, which is at the most a year and a half, but probably just under a single year, H has been living in her RV for many years.
That's great.
And then Melody says, well, at least it explains how Wade had the time to watch, read, listen, play, and memorize everything he did in the post-apocalyptic yet functional future. Years are at least 1,000 days long.
Wow.
So yeah, I hadn't really registered with me because I think my eyes had glossed over by this point in time. But yeah, there doesn't really make any sense there, given his own little universe. It would have been very easy to add that up and make her 22, but whatever.
Yep, he's not into time all that much, obviously.
Yeah, so from there we end up at Ogg's estate, which has a great introduction.
Yes, I have it written down. If you don't, there.
This was a contender for the dumb sentence of the week.
Yeah, I have it. Do you? It's not in yours, is it?
No, a reader sent it in, though. Benedict sent it in before I even had read it, so I was prepared for it.
Okay, I have it tagged as dumb sentence of the week. I mean, I hope this is the same one. I assume it is.
Yeah.
So a physical description, sort of loosely, of mountains and waterfalls and things like that. In Seattle or thereabouts, right?
Somewhere in Oregon, I think.
Oregon, okay.
Oregon.
And so they approach the house, H and Wade, and it looks just like Rivendell, H said. I nodded. It looks exactly like Rivendell in the Lord of the Rings movies, I said. And he omits the I assume the action where H turns and slaps him really, really hard on the side of the ear.
Yeah.
But that's omitted from this description.
I mean, I guess they just are so mentally in love and connected with each other that they just sort of are not even completing each other's sentences. They've moved on to fully just restating each other's sentences with added unnecessary detail.
Maybe he hasn't mastered the M dash where she says it looks just like Rivendell, and then it's Rivendell, and then he just didn't know how to do that.
But yeah, they get to Ogg's place, and I guess the book is there's not enough left that we can really distrust Ogg, but I still is like, are we sure about trusting this guy? Like,
weird Santa Claus guy. As they go into the house, though, I just want to play a quick game with you and the audience.
Okay.
In Ogg's house, as he walks them in, they pass, quote, row after row of blank. And I just want you to take a guess of row after row of what?
Okay. He maybe has a collection of like matadors outfits from like Hemingway era Spanish bullfighting. Like he's assembled a collection of those. Yeah,
it's a good guess. No, it's not that. I would have said heraldry or things from shields and collected old shields and heraldry and banners, because his house is large, and the Rivendell description just made me think that, I don't know, maybe suits of armor and stuff like that.
Yeah. Okay. Let me try another one. He's got like, those like Pacific Island currencies that are like giant wheels.
Oh, yeah,
like
stone.
two-ton
Yeah,
wheels.
sure.
Yeah, he's sort of like he's got those, and maybe some Easter Island statues emitted.
Yeah, and that makes me think also maybe jade sculpture would fit nicely in the kind of that architecture of the. There's sort of an Oriental, as they used to say, look to Rivendell, don't you think, with the sort of sloped roofs?
Yeah, that would work really nicely. But also something that would go there, and he could probably afford it, would be like an illuminated manuscript, like the Book of Kells. Like if you sort of had that displayed,
right,
like with the that monks did this like intricate, took them a year to do each page of it type of thing.
Yeah.
Just to really class up the house.
Yeah, or he bought like the Kensington rune stone, and he's, and then he allows people to take it out and study it, but otherwise it's based there. And it's, what are we talking about? It's row after row of video games, of course, vintage video games. And they are, of course, the ones that came from Halliday. But the fact that he needed to describe it, like he can't help himself.
Right. Yeah, it's there. Well, and then he's like, we'll deal with those after you've played the most epic battle in video game history, as Ogg is excited to see, because of course Wade wants to get in there and see the real life version of, I guess, the ones that he's virtually played.
Right. But then they share before the battle begins, and we're setting up. I think the next thing will be the battle, right, where they're storming.
Yeah, I guess it's it.
The castle and the gate. He has a tender moment with Ogg, where he says, "Why didn't Halliday talk to you for those 10 years?"
This is right after he geeks out on Ogg in a classically embarrassing fashion, but he then proceeds to sort of ask why you didn't talk to him, and Ogg says that it came down to our shared love of my wife. It was a classic love triangle where James Halliday loved her because she was the ultimate geek girl, and he couldn't have her, and he sort of withdrew because of that.
Yeah. Yeah, and she was in a tombstone in like a little plot on his land there in Rivendell. So we're obviously supposed to, take from it Aragorn's mom, in the film or something like that. He goes out there every day and tenderly picks away the ivy from her grave. And this is the guy they're trusting, by the way. So
yes, he picks it away the ivy, then goes and tries to set the high score in Robotron.
So that, I think it comes to a close. Do you have anything else in the actual, just in the narrative? I think that's kind of the end of it. Yeah,
that's sort of where it at. Well, yeah, he wants to see Artemis, and everyone is sort of like being like, ooh.
Oh yeah, he likes Artemis.
She's already jacked into the rig, so that's going to have to wait until they're done. It was an interesting choice, but whatever. Who cares at this point in time? But yeah, it's set up for the all-out assault on the IOI, and then the final gate.
Yeah, and it does actually. Before we concluded that chapter, we did get one more hell of a rig reference in there. I think he names the specific rigs that he has set up in his little booths there.
They're all top of the line, like Habsburg or something like that. But,
oh man.
That you would not expect any less from the great and powerful Ogg.
Yep. And so we will conclude the book next week, but obviously we've got some more things to do here, including the dumb sentence of the week.
A sentence begins with a capital letter. A capital letter is a letter that's big. A capital letter is not a small letter. A capital letter is big, big, big. A sentence ends with a period, or an exclamation, or a question mark. A sentence always ends with a period.
It's always good to remind us what a sentence is. And Ernest Cline has a lot of them, doesn't he? Connor, do you...
are pretty dumb. Yes, I've got a good one.
All right.
This one is just sort of, it's its own little thing. It's there's been categories of dumb sentences, like ones that sort of gobsmack you. This one is just sort of how did this make it into a book? Past an editor. He says, this is when he's in the place that he's not allowed to get semen on to upload all his stuff.
Sure.
He says, I paid GSS a monthly fee for unlimited data storage on my account, and I was about to test its limits.
Yes. Sometimes the banal does. I think my last one that I had last week was fairly banal, but sometimes those slap you in a way that just like, what is this?
Yeah. There was some good ones about hacking where they were just sort of long and, dorky in terms of like supposed to create drama. But that one was just sort of like, I guess you could test the limits of the connection or, put their promise to the test, but you're not going to test its unlimited limits. Okay. And that is all I'll think about that for the rest of my life.
Are there any from listeners?
No, Benedict had sent in that Rivendell one, and if there were any more, I did not take them down. But you're welcome to hit up the next one.
Yeah, mine is a little more it's one of those banner ones. It's a little more hit you across the face kind of a thing. This is going back to, what was his name? Like Big Dick 007 or whatever.
Hot cock.
Thank you.
He was a little too enthusiastically.
Yes. Oh wow, you had that on the tip of your tongue. He was a guy complaining about a magical sword or something, like a big
level 10
that he bought, and he was a level 7. And so while he was dealing with this customer complaint as an indentured servant, he would say snarky things to the people who, these morons who would call in with problems, and they would be censored by the software, and then he'd be given a warning, and eventually he'd be garnished or whatever his money would be.
Sort of thing that you'd get tired of doing after, maybe 3 times of saying profanity and bleeping it, and then
exactly, it would be like having those warning things on your early Mac where you'd turn them into Simpsons quotes, and those lasted all of 3 minutes. But he continued to do that because when this guy didn't understand why he couldn't use his level 10 sword that he bought for a lot of money, and he was only a level 7, he said, well, what am I supposed to do with it now? To which our hero, the hero of the book, says, you could shove it up your ass and pretend you're a corn dog. That's what he came up with.
I think I did write down in the book next to that line, just our hero. Like the guy we're supposed to be like rooting for. And and that was sort of similar to his conversation with Halliday in his office, where he's putting his feet up on the desk and telling him to go fuck a duck.
Yeah. What I wondered though was, did the censoring software pick this up? Because I don't know, ass, corn dog, shove, those, taken separately. But I suppose the syntax software is more sophisticated than that. But,
in another cubicle, there's a tech who's legitimately trying to help a guy whose avatar got a corn dog stuck up their ass, like as he was doing some weird thing. He's like, I just want to help this guy, and it's knocking down my, helping score. Like, we need to have a talk about this.
We're getting too aggressive with our algorithm, guys.
Yes. We got to respect these guys who are into dogging.
Wow. Pretty spectacular stuff this week.
Yeah. And, we're going to find out how this ends. We're going to find out what happens in the last 40 pages of the book that really turned this whole mess around and got dozens of respected nationwide critics to put this on their year-end best of list.
Yeah. I mean, boy, it's going to have to do some, James Joycean turnabouts before I can believe this. But you ain't lying. This made a lot of critics' lists. Do you have any? I mean, do we even dare wade in? Any predictions, or come on. I mean, can I make a prediction? They defeat the army and they get the key, and then he and Artemis get the hell out of Dodge. I mean, it's not possible that there be anything else, right? Is there another surprise? I don't think there is.
No, I mean, I guess, in the beginning he said that he won, but I'm guessing that it's going to be he won, but he's realized, his plan to leave the Earth in a rocket ship in isolation was not the way to live your life now that he has found true friendship. And so he's probably going to end up splitting the money with all these people, and, maybe they'll use it to make the world a better place at Artemis's urging. But whatever. They're also, in order to do that, because of last week's fan fiction, we know that they're going to have to quote Monty Python and the Holy Grail from memory. So, at that point, who cares?
I'm waiting for when he spends some of his money to get his earlobes reconstructed by a plastic surgeon. That's what I look forward to.
Yes.
And
you got a corn dog stuck in your ear gauge?
Will he renounce Riggs? That's what I want to know. Since that we just learned that is a theme now, is he ready to join one of those leather-clad booster gangs and get out and see the world, or is he maybe going to join the roving hordes? I don't know.
Or he can go work at the plug.
That's right.
Sponge off bodily fluids off of other people's rigs.
He could become one of those electric cars going down the road, bringing goods and workers into the city. We don't know. I guess there's a lot of possibilities.
Yeah, I've talked myself into it. I'm excited now.
Yeah. So stay tuned. As always, we thank you for joining us for 372 pages we'll never get back. And we're almost into that 372.
Get out there and finish that book.
All right. We'll see you next time. So long.
Bye. Theme music composed, recorded, and performed by Connor Lestoka.